At dinner, my father set down his wine glass and looked at me. "Your brother and Savannah are moving into the condo tomorrow," he said. "Pack your things and leave, you parasite." "But I pay the $14,500 rent," I whispered in stunned silence. He scoffed, his tone completely void of empathy. "So what? You're just a walking ATM to this family. They deserve this lifestyle more than you do." They expected me to vacate my leased luxury Miami smart condo within 24 hours so they could use it as a content house, while I continued paying the $14,500 rent. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments before we dive into this. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or beg or ask why. Anger wasn't loud this time. It was clinical. I simply said, "Understood," pushed my chair back, and retreated to my room. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon regret, but there was only absolute clarity. This was no longer a family breakdown. It was a balance sheet, and I was closing the ledger. I opened my laptop and bypassed any emotional hesitation, moving straight to cold, calculated action. I logged into the building's management portal and triggered the guarantor withdrawal protocol. I paid the $32,000 penalty to sever my liability, legally reclassifying them as unauthorized occupants. Management would now give them exactly 24 hours to prove their own income for a new lease, or building security would legally escort them out. As I started pulling my clothes from the closet, folding them into methodical squares, the narrative of the past 3 years shifted inward. I had been the silent investor in their version of family. After my mother passed away, I had abandoned my own home buying plans and moved my grieving father into this $14,500 a month high-rise. I thought I was preserving what was left of us. I funded Cameron's endless string of failed tech startups because I believed blood meant unconditional support. I let Savannah treat my home like a free luxury studio, but I had fallen into the trap of normalized cruelty. Relentless silent sacrifice doesn't earn respect, it morphs into an expected utility. They hadn't seen a daughter or a sister for years. They saw an infinite, emotionless resource. A subscription service with me footing the bill. The psychological mechanics behind their profound entitlement were simple. I had trained them to believe my boundaries did not exist. By continually shielding my father from reality and funding my brother's delusions without enforcing consequences, I had commodified my own love. They expected me to absorb their crises endlessly because they never had to feel the weight of their own failures. My silent generosity wasn't a virtue. It was an enabler. I opened a second tab on my browser and accessed the Smart Condo's biometric security dashboard. For 3 years, their fingerprints and facial recognition profiles had been registered under my master account as authorized occupants. With a few deliberate clicks, I permanently revoked Richard, Cameron, and Savannah's access. The screen flashed a confirmation prompt. I confirmed it. They were officially erased from the system. As I packed my belongings into cardboard boxes, I recognized that they weren't shocked by what they had done. They were merely arrogant, calculating that their host organism would never detach. They believed that because I had always absorbed their financial burdens, I would dutifully accept my own eviction just to keep the peace. The cold truth was that generosity without consent is not family love, it is theft. They expected me to keep financing the illusion of their elite lifestyle from a distance, absorbing the cost while they reaped the rewards. I zipped up my suitcase. The host was leaving, and reality was about to deliver a very harsh invoice. The next morning, the escalation of their hostility confirmed every decision I had made. Instead of showing an ounce of remorse or offering a single apology, the family doubled down on their entitlement. I walked into the kitchen to find my father, Richard, casually sipping espresso. He did not look at me with regret. He instructed me to leave my designer furniture behind because Savannah needed the modern aesthetic for her vlogging backdrop. He spoke as if I were a moving company employee rather than his daughter. I simply nodded. Moments later, Cameron casually texted me a detailed list of utility bills, internet services, and premium cable packages he expected me to keep on autopay. His message lacked even a basic greeting. It was just a set of demands from a failing tech founder who felt entirely entitled to my paycheck. To completely cement the audacity of the morning, Savannah posted a smug selfie from the Ocean View Terrace. I could see the notification pop up on my phone. The caption read, "New content mansion secured. complete with a champagne glass emoji. They were entirely unbothered, utterly confident in their fabricated reality. They left for the morning, strolling out of the front door with their heads held high, headed to a lavish brunch to celebrate their hostile takeover. They expected me to be gone by the time they returned, leaving behind a fully funded paradise for them to exploit. Their sheer arrogance was breathtaking, but it was exactly what I needed. It eliminated any lingering sympathy and greenlit my ultimate retaliation. They had constantly created crises for me to solve, and my solutions had become evidence that their actions were never serious. This time, I was going to let reality finish its sentence. I walked through the empty rooms, looking at the $28,000 custom vlogging studio equipment Savannah had ordered, the high-end espresso machine my father used every day, and the panoramic views of the Miami skyline they believed they owned. They had built their entire future on money, property, and obedience that were never theirs to claim. Anger wasn't loud. It was a quiet, methodical force driving my every step. The toxic manipulation was so blatant, so aggressively unapologetic, that it solidified my resolve. They didn't see me as a human being facing homelessness. They saw me as an inconvenience standing in the way of their influencer dreams. I took a moment to breathe in the silence of the condo. The ocean breeze blew through the cracked terrace door, rustling the curtains I had paid for. Every object in this space was a receipt of my misplaced loyalty. They believed they had won the war without firing a single shot. They thought they had successfully discarded the parasite, but they had fundamentally misunderstood who was holding the keys to the kingdom. Their morning of brunch and celebration was the final act of their fantasy. The reality check was coming. I refused to leave a mess, and I certainly refused to engage in a screaming match. Shifting entirely to cold calculation, I decided to execute a devastatingly professional exit. I am a senior data analyst, trained to notice discrepancies and quantify risk. I applied that exact expertise to my own life. I sat at the kitchen island and opened my financial software, generating a comprehensive, itemized report. I printed 36 months of highlighted financial audit logs, meticulously tracking every single dollar I had spent supporting them. I documented the $14,500 monthly rent, the exorbitant grocery deliveries, the utility costs, and the designer furnishings. I calculated the exact thousands I had sunk into Cameron's hollow business. I organized the paperwork into a thick, undeniable stack of evidence. I placed the massive stack of papers squarely on the center of the kitchen island, right beside the espresso machine. On top, I placed a single, freshly printed cover sheet. It read in bold, black ink, "Financial support paid by Morgan." Support ends with the lease. There was no emotional speech attached, no dramatic insult, just the cold, hard accounting he had accused me of weaponizing against family. I packed only what was mine. My clothes, my personal files, my laptop, and a few small mementos that actually mattered. I left behind the designer couches, the massive media center, and the dining table. I left his property intact, separating our shared life without stealing a single excuse he could use against me. I photographed every room for the building's management, ensuring there was unquestionable proof of the pristine condition in which I was leaving the unit. I gathered the physical keys, the garage passes, and the mailbox credentials, placing them in a neat row beside the audit logs. The silence in the condo felt different now. It felt like reclaimed territory. I opened the smart home dashboard one final time on my phone to verify the biometric revocation. The system confirmed that their fingerprints and facial scans were entirely wiped from the property's security network. The digital locks were reset. The account was closed. My financial and legal responsibility to this address was officially zero. I zipped my suitcase and rolled it toward the foyer. For one brief second, my hand hovered over the door handle. I remembered the nights I had sat with my father, trying to comfort him through his grief. But ending the lease felt like admitting those memories could no longer protect me from his cruelty. I released the handle, stepped out into the corridor, and pulled the heavy door shut. The mechanical lock engaged with a solid, final click. I walked to the elevator, my footsteps echoing in the quiet hallway. I was not changing locks on property they owned. I was ending a contract I owned. The professional precision of my exit left no room for negotiation. I descended to the lobby and handed my signed surrender documents to the property director. She stamped my copy as received, finalizing the transaction. I walked out of the gleaming glass doors of the Brickell high-rise and stepped into the humid Miami air. The sun was shining, the traffic was humming, and the suffocating weight I had carried for 3 years vanished. I was finally walking away from the balance sheet of their demands. The conflict, however, was about to elevate to a legal kill shot. While gathering my financial documents, my data analysis had uncovered a glaring discrepancy that demanded immediate attention. I discovered a secondary, deeply hidden twist in the accounting. Savannah's $28,000 custom vlogging studio equipment, the ring lights, the sound panels, the high-end cameras, and the staging furniture had been sneakily billed directly to my shared household credit account. But when I pulled the original invoices, I saw that the equipment was legally ordered and invoiced under the name of Cameron's failing tech company. They had used my personal credit line to subsidize a corporate purchase for a fake startup. This wasn't just entitlement, this was financial fraud. Sitting in the quiet corner of a local coffee shop, I opened my banking portal and initiated a formal dispute. I contacted the fraud department and clearly explained that a $28,000 commercial equipment charge had been unauthorized on my personal account. Because the invoices were explicitly linked to Cameron's corporate entity, and because I was neither an officer nor an employee of his business, the bank immediately flagged the transaction. Using my professional skills, I provided the exact timestamps, the corporate registration details, and the mismatched shipping manifests. The bank froze the charge on my end and initiated a corporate chargeback. This was a brilliant, perfectly legal maneuver that instantly shifted the massive financial liability entirely back to Cameron's company. By freezing the payment, I guaranteed that the bank would instantly lock the funds pending a fraud investigation. The merchant's automated accounting systems would immediately trigger chargeback notifications, aggressively pursuing Cameron's company for the $28,000. Since his fake startup had virtually zero liquid capital, this sudden cash flow crisis would trigger cascading overdrafts and cripple his daily operations. The vendors would demand immediate payment, freezing his accounts and ruining his commercial credit score. I took a sip of my black coffee, feeling the cold satisfaction of systematic justice. I was not sabotaging his company. I was simply refusing to be its illegal funding source. The liability belonged to him, and now the consequences did, too. I forwarded the formal dispute confirmation to my email and closed the laptop. This was the exact accounting they had asked for. They believed they could push me out of my home while quietly maintaining a direct pipeline to my bank account. They assumed I would be too emotional or too distracted to notice the fraudulent corporate billing. But I was a senior data analyst. I analyzed numbers for a living, and I had just audited their lies. The trap was perfectly set, and it was entirely constructed from their own deceit. I wasn't just cutting off their housing, I was dismantling the fraudulent financial foundation they had built behind my back. There would be no escape route for them. Savannah's influencer dreams were financed by stolen credit, and Cameron's entrepreneurial facade was built on a stolen identity. The moment the bank processed the reversal, their entire house of cards would collapse. I packed up my laptop and walked out of the coffee shop, heading toward the modest, furnished, short-term rental I had secured for myself. The legal severance was complete. The fraudulent charges were reversed. I had successfully severed every single financial artery they had attached to me. Now, all I had to do was wait for the clock to strike noon. At exactly 12:18 in the afternoon, the climax of their arrogance collided with reality. According to the building's security logs, which I later received from management, Cameron and Savannah arrived at the Brickell high-rise in a rented luxury SUV, packed to the brim with their designer luggage and whatever vlogging gear they hadn't fraudulently charged to me. Richard had gone down to the lobby to greet them, oozing the entitlement of a man who believed he was handing over an inherited empire. He led the way back to the private elevator bank, gesturing grandly for the couple to follow. He confidently pressed his thumb against the biometric scanner. A sharp red flash illuminated the panel. Access denied. He frowned, muttered something about a system glitch, and tried again. Red flash. Cameron pushed past him, placing his own thumb on the glass. Red flash. Savannah frantically punched her customized passcode into the digital keypad. Invalid entry. The power dynamic flipped in a fraction of a second. The system gave them the same cold, unyielding answer every single time. They were locked out of paradise. While they stood in the lobby, panicking alongside their mountain of luggage, I was sitting on the floor of a modest, quiet apartment across town, eating takeout noodles directly from the carton. My phone suddenly lit up. The first call was from Richard. I watched his name vibrate across the screen and let it go to voicemail. A text followed immediately. "What did you do to the scanner?" The second call came 11 seconds later. Then Cameron called. Then Richard again. I chewed my noodles in absolute silence, watching the notifications pile up. The barrage of arrogant commands quickly devolved into 73 frantic, panicked voicemails. Richard's voice shifted from demanding to desperate. He left messages begging for help, explaining that management had just approached them at the elevators, demanding immediate proof of income for a new lease within 24 hours before allowing anyone upstairs. He pleaded that they were locked out, that the SUV was racking up hourly charges, and that they couldn't afford a hotel in the meantime. Savannah sent a frantic text demanding I fix the error because her sponsors were expecting a condo tour video that afternoon. Cameron threatened to sue me for illegal eviction, completely ignoring the fact that he was never a legal tenant. Not a single message contained the words, "I am sorry." They realized with terrifying clarity that they were entirely locked out of their fabricated elite lifestyle. The luxury condo, the panoramic ocean views, the high-end security, none of it belonged to them. I silenced my phone and set it face down on the floor. I expected to feel a surge of vindictive triumph, but what I actually felt was a profound, clean grief. The red flashes on that scanner were the ultimate receipt. They showed the absolute difference between the life my family believed they owned and the woman who had been secretly financing it. I did not respond. Absolute silence was the only finisher they deserved. By removing my signature, my money, and my biometric authorization, I had plunged them into a housing and financial crisis entirely of their own making. I took another bite of my food, relishing the simple, uncomplicated taste of independence. For the first time in 3 years, the relentless demands had stopped. The quiet in my new apartment felt heavy, but it finally belonged to me. The opportunistic alliance crumbled rapidly under the crushing weight of reality. Within days, Cameron's company was hit with the $28,000 chargeback. The vendor's aggressive collection efforts bankrupted his fake tech startup immediately. Savannah, realizing her content mansion was a total mirage and her fiancé was drowning in sudden, inescapable debt, publicly broke off the engagement and moved back in with her parents across the country. Richard, unable to qualify for a luxury lease on his limited pension, was forced into a tiny, budget apartment above a noisy strip mall, miles away from the pristine ocean views he had felt so violently entitled to. They frantically reached out, leaving voicemails, begging me to bail them out, to co-sign a new lease, to fix the disaster they had started. I refused every single request. I let the cold consequences of their actions stand. Caring about my father did not require restoring the exact conditions that allowed him to exploit me. As the dust settled, the narrative of my life transitioned into a deep, philosophical clarity. The justice of the planter is not found in seeking destruction, but in redirecting your energy toward fertile ground. Without the massive drain of the luxury rent and their endless, unchecked expenses, I rebuilt my savings faster than I ever thought possible. I accepted a promotion to Director of Financial Strategy, a role I had previously avoided because my father claimed the rigorous travel schedule would leave him feeling abandoned. I leveraged my analytical expertise to establish a specialized financial literacy program for women escaping financial exploitation and toxic family dynamics. I taught them how to read complex leases, isolate emergency funds, and distinguish genuine generosity from open-ended liability. I turned my personal vindication into a constructive, inspiring legacy of empowerment. I've come to realize that sacrifice without consent does not create family. It creates entitlement. For years, I believed that enduring their cruelty and funding their lives was the required price of love. But being the capable person in a family is not a lifetime contract to be used as a human bank account. You are allowed to resign from a role nobody asked whether you wanted. You are allowed to stop proving your love through sheer exhaustion. The hardest part was accepting that walking away was necessary for my own survival. The sudden appreciation people show when your contributions disappear is not a command to return. Forgiveness isn't always for the other person. Sometimes it's the only way to set yourself free. I forgive them, but I will never again finance the conditions of my own disrespect. I found profound peace, not in shouting matches, but in the absolute, silent removal of my presence, allowing reality to deliver the exact consequences they had earned. I finally learned that a boundary can be both painful and incredibly right, and that true peace requires walking away from those who commodify your existence. If you were in Morgan's shoes, would you have paid the termination fee to sever ties, or handled it differently? Share this story with someone who needs a reminder of their worth, and don't forget to subscribe for more.